It's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. I'm getting a lot of questions about this massive data breach, which may be the second largest data breach in history that information started coming out about last month. And I'm going to start today's show with my advice for you. And this is actually something that applies to all of us. Also, I am a big fan of dynamic demand pricing. But man, people can mess it up and infuriate you and me as consumers. And I'm going to show you where people have taken it too far and it's just ridiculous. And also, I want to thank Wes Moss, who filled in for me twice last week while I was having fun off playing hooky from work.
Once last week and then yesterday, but yeah.
It was yesterday great. Too?
Yeah, it was last Thursday and then yesterday.
Wow. I love this playing hooky.
I know you do.
Yeah.
I know you do. People seem to like having Wes answer the investment questions, so I think it was good.
Okay. All right, so let's talk data breach. This is the kind of thing that we are so numb to that we ignore at our peril. So, you know, we get these idiotic letters that the lawyers write every time some company has an ugly data breach, and the lawyers send these things that are so inane. And blah, blah, blah company may have suffered a data breach, and your information may have been in the breach. And it may have included blah, 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 blah. And what we're doing for you is we're offering you 1 to 2 years of worthless credit monitoring. Go have a nice life. And so we get so many of these that basically we just shut down. And we look at it as a bunch of noise. And it's kind of overwhelming because in a busy life, we got so many things going on. Well, the latest breach is from an organization none of us have ever heard of, National Public Data. And they have giant databases of files on us. And it's not just social security numbers. They've got current and prior addresses, date of birth. You name layer after layer after layer of info that they had on us that has all been captured by crooks unencrypted. And it's being shopped right now. A lot of this, they have your email address. They may have your phone number. You start thinking about all the layers of havoc someone can cause in your life because of all this that is in their hands. So what you need to know is that this is one that I hope finally gets you to do the simplest precaution, which is to do a credit freeze. And I've been fascinated by what's been going on since this data breach because it's gotten so much publicity in every form of media that there's been this real defensive posture from people who have a lot to lose if you put in place a credit freeze. So, like, there's been junk trying to tell you, oh, just put in fraud alerts. Okay, let's see. If you want to do something that you're pretending to do something to protect yourself that does absolutely nothing, you put in a fraud alert with Equifax TransUnion Experian, which is what they wish you'll do because they want to still make all the money building these dossiers on you, packaging you, and selling you off again and again and again. So the least harm to the credit bureau's revenue is for you to do a worthless fraud alert. Doesn't do anything for you. That's window dressing. Then there's this other step. Credit bureaus fail to get you to just do that almost nothing measure. They say, oh, you know what's so much better than a credit freeze? Do a credit lock. A credit lock is this Frankenstein's monster that Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian have created, where they still build the dossiers on you, sell off your information over and over and over again, which again creates another layer of risk of that information falling in the wrong hands and doing more actions of havoc in your life. And it's supposed to be so much easier than credit freeze. Baloney, baloney, baloney. Ignore credit lock. The only effective tool we have available to us is credit freeze, which is free to do, doesn't take that much effort with Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. You set it up for free, and I know there's all these rumors out there, I don't know how they spread, that if you do a credit freeze, you're not going to be able to use any of the credit you have. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. So whatever credit cards you have, lines of credit, HELOC, your mortgage, car loan, they all continue just as they are. It makes no difference with any of them. What it does is it prevents somebody who gets access to your personal information, knowing your mother's maiden name, your phone number, your address, your prior addresses, social security number, obviously, all these things. When they pretend to be you and apply for credit, because you have a credit freeze in place, it goes nowhere. Their application goes nowhere. There's no hard inquiry on your credit, nothing. You don't have anything you have to clean up, nothing. So credit freeze, hyper easy to do, hyper quick. Unfortunately, the credit bureaus hate it so much that there's no uniform procedure. You have to do a different procedure with Equifax than you do with Experian, than you do with TransUnion. So it'll take you about 15 minutes to set them up. All right, so if you later need to apply for credit, and it's actually you, the legit person applying for credit, you then temporarily thaw your credit for either that specific application or for a specific number of days. Very simple to do, again, free. And then your credit goes back into lockdown. This is something I've been talking about for so long I can't even tell you. And I want you to know that prevention here is so the best cure, it's not even close. Because if somebody gets your information from a breach we know of, like this one, or many other breaches we don't even know have happened, you're fighting from behind to clear up your name, stop the debt collectors, and avoid all the problems that come with people getting credit as if they're you. Please do this. If you want to know, I've got a very simple guide, because this is a simple thing to do, clark.com/credit freeze for you to set it in place.
We also have a guide to this data breach. Since it was so huge, we've put together a comprehensive one-stop shop for you at clark.com/data breach.
And let me tell you, it's shocking. When I put in my information and I saw how many times I was part of this breach and what information crooks have from each time that my information was breached, wow.
It's crazy.
And Christa, you've always said for as many years as I've known you, when this became an issue with identity theft and all that, you said, I know my stuff's out there.
I know, it's terrible.
And it is out there, and you can be passive and wait for the train wreck, or you can be active and avoid the train wreck.
Okay, we'll go to some questions here. This one's from Carrie in Florida, and these are related. With the recent database breach that included Social Security numbers, is it a wise idea to create an everify.gov account to lock your Social Security number? I'm aware that you can do a credit freeze and or lock your credit file, but that doesn't keep anyone from still using your Social Security number for work or to be used as in a background check. Your thoughts are greatly appreciated.
Okay, so Carrie, this is a very important thing that is both related and unrelated to this data breach. So now more and more employers use E-Verify. So when they are screening a candidate for a job, they want to make sure that they have a valid right to work in the United States, valid social security number and all that. So people will engage in identity theft, not for the purpose of obtaining credit, but for the purpose of being able to work. And they will pretend to be you. And let me tell you, with the IRS later, there's real problems when somebody else is reporting income under your social security number. So that's why the government now has this procedure where you lock your social security number so it cannot be used in the E-Verify process. It is a simple process. It's very different than the way credit freeze stuff works that we were just talking about. But it is a simple thing to do to prevent that person, whoever it might be, from wherever impersonating you for the purpose of gaining employment.
Brian in North Carolina says, a close Air Force buddy introduced me to you about a year ago, and I've been hooked since. My question is this. We will be getting married soon.
Congratulations.
And a K-1 visa, and my fiance needs to apply for a Social Security card, which is needed for a marriage license. This will be his first time to the States, and being from a second world country, the Philippines, he is unaware of the shenanigans with regards to ID theft. The Social Security number is needed for a number of events, such as obtaining a marriage license, adding him to my medical plan, and a plethora of other financial and marital documents before he can get established and become a contributing member of our society. What is your advice for him in terms of setting a security freeze on his social, and what measures should I take to ensure his identity is protected? Thank you for all and your staff do. And P.S. I'm not a stranger to security freezes, how they work, had mine in place long before ID theft was a thing.
Well, so Brian, what an interesting question. I've never had one about an immigrant to the United States coming in and worrying about identity theft in that circumstance. So when an immigrant comes to the United States, gets a brand new Social Security number, it's almost like a minor child getting a Social Security number. There is no credit history there. And if you attempt to apply for a credit freeze, it's going to come back no file. There's not going to show anything attached to that Social Security number in terms of credit, no identity with the credit bureaus, nothing yet to freeze. So the credit freeze will become appropriate at the point that your fiancé obtains his first credit and establishes an identity with the 3 credit bureaus, and that's when credit freeze would be something you would do. So there's not a high priority right off the bat setting up credit freeze in this circumstance. I'd say we're talking like a year or so down the road when there's already established credit in your fiancé's name.
Robert in Florida says, my wife and I attempted to fly out to a family wedding in Missouri on July 19th on Spirit Airlines, the infamous day of the Microsoft Windows crash from CrowdStrike. When we got to the airport before 6 a.m., it was a madhouse of passengers from several delayed airlines, all trying to get through the ticket counters. We waited patiently and received our handwritten boarding pass from Spirit. When we got to the gate, it was just as chaotic, and after waiting an hour past our departure time, the employees instructed us that the plane was going to fly out, but with no passengers, because they weren't sure if they were going to have issues with takeoff or landing or any computer glitches. They instructed all those stranded passengers to reach out to Spirit for rescheduling, which we could not do as we missed the wedding, or request a refund. After hours on the phone with no avail, I started to process through their online customer care portal. I then contacted my credit card company about this dispute. They initially refunded me, but after they contacted Spirit, this was their response. Invalid dispute. Service was partially provided. Manifest showing the passenger boarded and flew the flight. No credit due. I'm still fighting them through emails, but I need your help. I don't want to be out $554, and other than filing a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, I'm not sure what else to do.
Okay, so there are so many people, Robert, that are in messes from what happened with CrowdStrike. And so let me tell you what you need to do in your case. First of all, Spirit doesn't even know that they didn't fly you because things were so chaotic. So what you do is you file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Transportation about Spirit, and that will create a file with the feds. You then, with the credit card company, you redispute it. And you say in your redispute that the flights never flew. Remember, and the people processing these with the credit card company, they're just popping those through one after another. Nobody's actually looking at your actual dispute. That's why you redispute. You can provide a copy of news stories. Look at this. You'll see what happened that day. The flights never happened. Spirit is in a world of hurt right now. There's chaos. They're doing all kinds of layoffs as they're trying to survive since they're losing so much money and they're short of cash as an airline, which, by the way, brings up a side point. Any tickets you're buying on Spirit, make sure you buy with a credit card. Do not buy with a debit card, because if Spirit fails, you lose your money with the debit card. Your money is restored with a credit card. On the thing with your bank, your credit card issuer, file a complaint at consumerfinance.gov. In addition to redisputing with the credit card company, you need to be on record with the, because time works against you here. You need to be on record with DOT in terms of Spirit and with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau as far as your credit card issuer, and you will get this resolved. You're just going to have to push the right buttons to get it resolved. And by the way, I'm really sorry about you missing the wedding you probably looked forward to for months, and it's just one of those crazy circumstances. None of us did anything wrong who got caught up in the flight meltdowns on all the airlines, but we suffer the consequences of it. And the worst is you shouldn't be out of your money for a trip that never happened. I want to hear back from you that you were able to get the credit that you were supposed to have. Coming up ahead, I have always loved, and other people are not so excited about, dynamic demand pricing. And there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. And there are a lot of people who are tone deaf making us mad. Wait till you hear some of the stuff going on. So I love computer modeling that sets prices, because done right, it gives the most efficient pricing possible for stuff we buy, things we do. I've even talked about how much I love restaurants using dynamic demand pricing as more and more experiment with charging less for particular entree on, let's say, Monday evening than they do Friday or Saturday evening. Because what happens in business is you've got peaks and valleys. That's why we know that an airline ticket might be cheaper on a Tuesday or Wednesday, but much more money on Friday or Sunday, peak flying days at Thanksgiving. Would you expect for things to cost the same to fly somewhere the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the Sunday after than it would be on Thanksgiving Day? No, you wouldn't. So dynamic demand pricing is where computer technology that's able to look at historical averages and all different kinds of things comes up with different pricing levels. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And we talked months ago about how Wendy's got such a black eye when they were going to all digital pricing in their restaurants. And there was a lot of bragging that they were going to be able at lunchtime to push prices way up. And while somebody was in line, they could see the menu board price change up. People were furious. And then there was this thing with that band that was big like 30 years ago. You may not have ever heard of them, Oasis, that was back on a nostalgia tour. And people were in line to buy tickets. And while they were in line, the cost of the tickets, as more and more people bought, the tickets tripled in price. The dynamic demand pricing was up to the second. And even when people were in line to buy the tickets, humans in line, not buying online, the prices went up. And it became this big scandal in England. Now there's an investigation in Parliament and all that. But I'm going to defend something, not that. I'm going to defend something that is, for so many people, so unpopular. It is not a ripoff for a business to create more efficiency by sending price signals to you that lower or raise the price based on creating more demand at quiet times, less demand at busy times, because that ultimately, this is so weird, and this is why economics is the dismal science, that ultimately creates overall lower prices for consumers. Think about this. Pre-computer, analog, back in time, in the Wayback Machine, early bird specials. Restaurants for generations have offered early bird specials. There's a restaurant that we love to go to that from 5 p.m. to 5:30, they only do 30 minutes. They have smaller portions at a third less than the normal menu price. And they are packed 7 nights a week between 5 and 5:30. And then once 5:30 happens, it stays quiet again till more normal dinner time, like 6:30, 7 o'clock. But they have found that it drives traffic to them with the pricing. And that means tables that would sit empty, servers that would have nothing to do and not be earning any tips, are now making money they wouldn't make otherwise. And you could say, well, people would have come at a different time and they would have paid the regular menu prices. That's not how it works. The price signal sends a signal to people, hey, you know what? I wasn't going to eat out tonight, and food inflation's been so much, but look at this deal we can get where we get a third off the price. And so we go at that time, and it creates additional demand, additional customers. So I'm a big fan of that. And, I remember when I did a tip about flying, I did it on social media, where we were flying on a holiday. And there were some people who were very upset with me that people were having to work on the holiday because we were flying on a holiday. I mean, the airlines are going to fly, the hotels are going to be open, the car rental counter is going to be open every day of the year, and I can get a much lower price doing that. I was looking at flights recently for the Christmas New Year's period, and I was looking day by day at the price differences. It's crazy, and that is dynamic demand pricing. And what it does is it does change that behavior. And you say, well, I'll fly this day instead of that day. I think this is good stuff. I mean, obviously, you're exploiting people if they've come to your event and you're raising the prices while they're waiting for their time at the ticket window. But when you have the ability as an informed consumer to look at the price and say yes or no, I got no problem with that. In the Wendy's case, as I said when all that blew up, that if they were using the dynamic demand pricing to offer lower deals at off-peak times, everybody would be happy. It's because the way that was pitched is they were going to push up prices at lunchtime. That was something, you don't come between somebody's wallet and their empty stomach. How is that different than the airlines charging more on Friday and Sunday? There's just something about it when it comes to people's stomachs. You don't do that.
Okay, we'll go to questions. This is from Neva in North Carolina. I have a follow-up question about modular homes. Recently, Clark has spoken enthusiastically about modular construction, but noted that uptake has been slow in the U.S. What would Clark recommend for a family interested in considering a modular home? I did some research, and it appears that the builders in my region are custom home companies, and custom homes, of course, tend to be more expensive and add the complication of a separate land purchase. Also, do you think that a modular home might appreciate less than a traditional home with the reluctance of Americans to broadly adopt the modular construction? Are financing options less favorable as with manufactured homes? Hopefully, we're a couple years out from our first home purchase and willing to get creative to minimize debt.
Okay, this is a great question. So we talk a lot about this. Like in our show planning meeting, we were having a big discussion about all this with various forms of production that are cheaper, 3D printed homes that have been selling very quickly where they've been made available. And they tend to be about 25% cheaper than traditional construction, stick-built, site-built. And then the components being built in a factory and trucked to the build site, raised in place by cranes. It's how building is done generally outside the United States, and it's just not been, it's been at the margins in the U.S. So let me deal with your questions one by one. A modular home that's a term for where an entire house is built by components, trucked to the site, and put in place. It has no effect on the ultimate value of a home, the financing of it, the resale value of it, nothing like that. A lot of production builders, those are big publicly traded builders that buy a big plot of land and build hundreds of homes, or even out in the mountain states, maybe thousands of homes in a development. They're doing modular construction. They're building homes with components. Now, not everything is as dramatic as what we're talking about here, with an entire home being put together by components that are trucked in. But big production builders are trying to become more efficient. You said something, though, that is a whole different scenario. That is, if you're on a single piece of land where a builder is building a home, it's going to cost a lot more per square foot. There's a lot of inefficiencies involved with building a one-off home on a single piece of property versus these publicly traded builders that are building hundreds or even past 1,000 homes in an area. So the inefficiencies involved with a one-off build create much higher costs and longer build times. And so you short circuit that if you have a builder in an area who does modular building, where the home is built in components up to 400 miles away, trucked in, the builders prepared the site, put in a slab or whatever it is, and then they lower the components. It's not common in the United States. It's hard to find that being available. And so
Neva might have to move. Like they're doing it in Texas. We know that there's a community in Florida. I mean, they're just
Arizona,
right.
California. We talked about a development in California that people lined up. It was I think that one was a 3D printed neighborhood. People lined up down the sidewalk in the dark, and they all sold out immediately because it was 30% cheaper for those than traditional stick-built homes. What you're trying to do is, though, more like looking for a needle in a haystack, and that's why it's so confusing. But in terms of the value of the home, you buy it cheaper, but it doesn't affect its long-term value. And often, a home built in a factory and components and trucked to site will be a much better built home than a home that is built stick-built on location.
But you could call some of these developers and see where their next developments are going to be. You never know. Okay, Angel in Florida says, we bought a flipped house in the spring and found that the flipper cut corners everywhere, including the new ductwork for the AC in the attic. When we were replacing the ductwork, we found a plastic container full of diamond rings.
No, you didn't.
Ruby and emerald jewelry pieces, and a whole bunch of platinum settings. I can see the markings on the gold identifying that it's real, but other than that, I don't know where to start to sell the jewelry. A friend mentioned taking it to a pawn shop, but how do I know they're not going to rip me off? Pawn shops are a dime a dozen in South Florida. I know diamonds aren't worth as much these days since lab created became popular. Heck, my engagement ring is lab created. This money could really help us on one of the projects we would like to do, but we were waiting to do it until we had the money saved. Any guidance is greatly appreciated.
Wow, I mean,
how about that?
Angel, I didn't know where you were going with the story when you started talking about, the bad duct work and all the substandard work that was done by the home flipper and all that. So at least you end up with the precious stones, the diamonds, whatever, that may defray some of the costs of those repairs. So know that when you try to sell secondhand stones, they tend to have a value in the marketplace, believe it or not, of only about 20 cents on the retail dollar. I'm very, very low. And that's what people always get frustrated about. And if you don't shop around, you'll get even lower than that. It's funny, if you look on Reddit, you'll see people with very, very, very strong opinions about, well, you're going to make much more money doing this than if you do that and on like that. The real truth is, the more you shop around trying to sell them, the better you're going to do. And so you want to go to jewelers, because you think about jewelers, if they've got diamonds they can buy, and they can buy them from you cheaper than wholesale, they're making money.
And settings, platinum setting. Look, I wonder if there was a heist, and this is the...
Oh, and they're stored there?
I don't know. Well, I
didn't think about all the stuff being stolen.
But yeah, jewelers,
Yeah, so pawn shops, yeah, but jewelers really, and it's real shoe leather. It's real work going around and getting quotes from different ones. You want to check first with jewelers to see if they do buy stones from people. The jewelry itself, that's much harder to sell than the actual individual stones. So it does require you spending time to really get out there and see what people will, in fact, give you. And give you, I hate using that term.
I know.
It's not really give you. What they're going to pay you for what you found. And I hope that everything works out well eventually with the house where the substandard work was done. And I hope you have an absolutely great rest of your day. Looking forward to serving you again tomorrow right here on the Clark Howard Show, which is devoted to you learning ways to save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off.